I never imagined that something as simple as applying an oil to my hands before bed could make a difference in my life. I've lived with arthritis for years, and although I've grown used to many of its limitations, the nighttime and morning stiffness has been one of the hardest challenges to endure. When night comes, the pain intensifies, and what should be a time of rest turns into a constant struggle against discomfort. Trying to sleep with swollen, stiff hands is hard to explain to anyone who hasn't lived it. It feels like your fingers are trapped, as if the joints had turned into rusty hinges. A stab here, a burn there, and sleep that breaks again and again. For a long time, I thought this was simply an inevitable part of the disease, something I had to learn to live with. I've tried medications, therapies, and different relaxation techniques. Some treatments helped for a while, but the underlying problem always came back: nighttime stiffness. And with each night of poor rest, the next day became heavier, slower, and with less desire to face everyday tasks. That's when an unexpected conversation with my rheumatologist came up. I told her how difficult the nights were and how frustrating it was not to find lasting relief. She listened carefully, and after analyzing my case, suggested I try something different. Not a new medication or a complicated therapy, but something much simpler: applying an oil to my hands before bed. At first I was surprised. An oil? Could it really make a difference? Even so, her approval gave me the confidence to try. That small change marked the beginning of a new chapter in my experience with arthritis. In this video, I want to tell you how that process went, what I discovered by trying this oil, what science says about it, and how such a simple routine can bring real relief to those of us who struggle with pain and stiffness. I'm going to share my experience step by step, from the first trial nights to the results that encouraged me to continue. I'll also explain how to apply it correctly and what precautions you should take. My intention is not to sell you miracles, but to offer an honest testimony that can inspire you to find new ways to improve your quality of life. Before we begin, I'd love to hear from you. How old are you? And from which country are you watching me? Leave it in the comments, because your stories and your company make this space more valuable every day. What it means to live with arthritis in your hands. When we hear the word arthritis, many people relate it only to joint pain or to a disease of old age. But living it firsthand is much more complex. It's not just about occasional discomfort. It's about living with a condition that directly affects the way we use our hands every day. Arthritis is, in simple terms, the inflammation of the joints. In the case of the hands, it shows up in the fingers, knuckles, and wrists. That inflammation causes pain, stiffness, and over time, even deformity in the joints. But what really hits hard is not just the pain itself, but the limitations it imposes. The hands are among the parts of the body we use most without realizing it. From the moment we wake up until we go to sleep, they're constantly moving, holding, writing, cooking, getting dressed, caressing someone we love. When arthritis enters the picture, all those everyday actions become a challenge. I remember the day I tried to open a jar of jam. I had done it thousands of times before without even thinking. But that time, the lid felt impossible. I twisted with all my strength, and the stabbing pain in my fingers forced me to let go. It was a strange feeling, not because the jar wouldn't open, but because for the first time I felt that something so small was out of my reach. The same happened with tasks I had always considered simple. Writing a quick note on paper, buttoning my shirt, holding a comb. Every action reminded me that my body no longer responded as it used to, and that sense of loss, of not being able to trust my own hands, was even harder than the physical pain. Arthritis in the hands isn't limited to the moment you're doing something specific. It's there all the time. In the morning when you wake up with fingers as stiff as wood. During the day, when you try to carry a shopping bag and feel it slip from your hands. At night, when the swelling keeps you from falling asleep. It's an unwanted companion that never leaves. Beyond the physical, there's a deep emotional impact. With each limitation comes frustration, sadness, and in some cases, a sense of dependence. Losing autonomy is not easy to accept. Suddenly you need someone to help you button your jacket, open a bottle of water, or cut a piece of food. Things you once took for granted now require asking for help. And asking for help constantly, even humbly, also wears down your self-esteem. The sentence that best describes this experience is one that came straight from my soul in a moment of despair. I never imagined that even holding a glass would become a challenge. And when your own hands, the ones you used all your life to work, to create, to care, no longer respond as before, it's like losing an essential part of your identity. Arthritis doesn't only affect the hands, it affects the way you relate to the world. You can no longer cook as easily, handwrite a letter, or lift a grandchild in your arms without feeling a pain that cuts to the bone. It's as if every day you have to renegotiate with your body what you can and cannot do. And accepting those new rules is a painful, slow process. In this first part, I want you to understand this. Arthritis is not only a disease of the joints, it's an experience that transforms your daily life. Understanding that is the first step toward valuing any small progress, any relief, any tool that helps you regain a bit of freedom. Why nights are so hard? If there's a time of day when arthritis makes itself most present, it's at night. When the body seeks rest, the disease seems to grow stronger. For those of us living with arthritis in our hands, the nighttime hours don't bring relief. They become a test of endurance. Nighttime stiffness has a medical explanation. During the night, circulation slows down, the joints remain at rest, and the muscles don't move. That lack of movement makes the joints cool down, which intensifies inflammation and causes the tissues to stiffen. Upon waking, morning stiffness is one of the most characteristic symptoms of arthritis. The fingers feel like wooden blocks. It's hard to close or open them, and even movements as simple as reaching your hand toward the lamp become a challenge. But beyond the physiological explanation, there's the lived experience. Imagine wanting to sleep deeply and feeling a stabbing pain appear in your knuckles, feeling your fingers harden little by little until you can't find a comfortable position. Over and over you change your hand position, rub your fingers, try to arrange the pillow so the pain eases, but nothing seems enough. And so, sleep is interrupted, fragmented, slipping away. Sleeping poorly for one night might not seem serious, but when it repeats night after night, the consequences add up. Tiredness becomes an inseparable companion, and the next day your energy isn't enough to handle the simplest tasks. Making breakfast, going for a walk, reading a book, everything feels uphill. Plus, constant pain affects your mood. The lack of rest brings irritability, sadness, and a sense of defeat that becomes harder and harder to fight. Quality of life is hit in a silent way. It's not just the pain, it's what the pain steals. The hours of rest, calm, good humor, the ability to enjoy simple moments. Many times arthritis wears down not only the body, but also the mind and spirit. The hardest part of all is that this experience isn't individual. Talking with other people who also live with arthritis, I realize that most share the same story. Nights are the worst. There's a kind of tacit agreement among patients. The day can be complicated, but the night becomes the true enemy. And in that connection, in that shared experience, a bit of relief also appears. Knowing you're not alone in this struggle, that other people understand exactly what you feel, helps carry the load. That's why it's so important to talk about it, because each testimony reminds us we're not isolated, that there are millions of people living this same silent battle while everyone else sleeps. Nighttime stiffness and the pain that interrupts rest are, without a doubt, among the cruelest symptoms of arthritis. However, they're also the reason we seek alternatives, relief, and solutions. Because no one deserves to spend their nights awake fighting their own body. And that's precisely where the discovery I want to share with you comes into play. A simple oil, approved by my rheumatologist, that made a difference in those long nights of pain. When treatments aren't enough. For years, the only words I heard at every medical appointment were the same. Anti-inflammatories, painkillers, and in some cases, stronger treatments that could affect the stomach, liver, or kidneys. It's not that doctors wanted to limit me. Those were simply the tools they had. And for a while, I accepted that. The anti-inflammatories helped reduce swelling, yes, but in return they caused stomach acidity and discomfort. The painkillers eased the pain for a few hours, but over time I noticed I needed ever higher doses to feel any relief. It was like entering a circle with no way out. Each pill took away some pain, but left me with another discomfort. I remember one time my doctor warned me I needed regular checkups to monitor my liver. Hearing that made me think, what good was it to relieve my hands if in exchange I was harming another vital organ? I felt trapped between two evils, with no option that truly gave me peace. As the years passed, resignation began to take hold. I told myself over and over, I thought there was nothing else I could do. That sentence became my shield and my sentence. A shield because it protected me from false hopes, and a sentence because it closed the door to any alternative that might exist. I lived convinced that pain was something I had to learn to live with. I adapted as best I could, accepting that opening jars, handwriting, or sleeping through the night were things of the past. But deep down, that acceptance wasn't real. It was rather a form of surrender. And it was precisely at that point of surrender that, unexpectedly, a light appeared. Because sometimes, when you've tried everything conventional medicine can offer and don't find relief, the need arises to look for other paths. And that's where my search for alternatives began. The idea of the oil, from a tip to a trial. The idea of using a natural oil didn't come from me. In fact, at first it sounded odd, almost naive. I heard about it during a conversation with a friend, also a rheumatology patient. She said to me, "I've been using oil on my hands before bed, and it helps with the stiffness." When I heard it, I didn't know whether to take it seriously. It seemed too simple for something as complex as arthritis. However, that seed stayed in my mind. At the next appointment, I brought it up with my rheumatologist. I expected a negative answer, a disapproving look. But to my surprise, she nodded calmly and said, "There's no problem with trying it. It can even help. What matters is that you use a safe oil and apply it consistently." That small approval was enough to spark a flame of hope. For the first time in a long while, I felt there was something else I could try, something not on the medication list or the prescription pad. Of course, I had doubts too. I wondered whether it would really have any effect, whether it would be just a fleeting illusion or a trick of the mind. Even so, I decided to give it a chance. I prepared as if it were a ritual. I went to the store to buy the recommended oil, took it home, and placed it on my nightstand. The first night I sat in silence with the bottle in my hands and thought, maybe this won't work, but at least I'll try. The feeling was strange, hope and skepticism in equal parts. Hope, because I longed with all my heart to find real relief. Skepticism, because after so many years of pain, you learn not to get your hopes up too much. That moment before the first attempt was, in itself, an act of courage. I reminded myself I had nothing to lose and much to gain. And with that mix of emotions, I began the small experiment that would end up making an unexpected difference in my hardest nights. The first night of trial. The first night I decided to do it calmly, as if it were a small ritual. I washed my hands with warm water, not only to clean them, but also to relax the joints a bit. Then I dried them with a soft towel and took the bottle of oil. I remember opening it slowly, as if uncorking it also opened a new possibility for me. I poured a few drops into my palm, and immediately the aroma wrapped around me. It wasn't a strong smell, but rather warm, comforting, almost as if it were already saying, "Relax, you're in good hands." The oil felt silky, with a texture that invited massaging. I began to gently rub each finger, going over the joints one by one, like someone carefully caressing a wound so as not to hurt it. As I massaged, I noticed a pleasant warmth. It wasn't burning or itching, but a gentle heat that seemed to seep slowly into my hands, as if it wanted to make room in the midst of the stiffness. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in a long while, I felt in control of something as simple as caring for my own hands. I went to bed with that feeling still present. I confess I wasn't expecting much. I told myself, surely tomorrow I'll wake up the same, but at least I tried. However, the surprise came at dawn. On waking, the stiffness was there, yes, but something had changed. My fingers weren't as hard as always. I moved them slowly and felt that instead of being trapped in iron, as used to happen, they slid more easily. It was a revelatory moment. I could move my fingers without feeling like they were trapped in iron. It wasn't a miracle cure, I knew that well, but it was the first time I woke up with a different sensation, with a glimmer of hope I hadn't felt in a long time. That morning, I had breakfast with a smile, because although the pain remained, the stiffness had eased a bit. And that bit meant an awful lot. I said to myself, if after one single night I notice something, what will happen if I do it consistently? And that's how a path of trial, patience, and discovery began. What science says about oils. When you find something that works for you, a question always arises. Is it just my imagination, or is there a real explanation behind it? That's why I wanted to understand what doctors and science say about oils applied to the hands. The first thing I discovered is that many natural oils have mild anti-inflammatory and analgesic properties. They're not a substitute for medication, of course, but they are a valuable complement. For example, olive oil contains antioxidant compounds that help reduce inflammatory processes in tissues. Coconut oil, for its part, is rich in fatty acids that deeply moisturize the skin and ease stiffness by improving local circulation. Another example is castor oil, known for centuries for its ability to soothe muscle and joint pain. When applied, it slowly penetrates the skin and exerts a relaxing effect on the muscles and tendons surrounding the joints. And we can't forget essential oils like lavender, which besides providing a calming scent, have a relaxing effect on the nerves, promoting nighttime rest. Science explains that massaging with oils stimulates blood circulation in the area, which helps bring more oxygen and nutrients to damaged tissues. That simple act of massaging, combined with the properties of the oil, can reduce stiffness and improve mobility. Of course, no serious doctor would present it as a miracle. It doesn't cure arthritis or replace a treatment, but it is proven that small gestures like this can improve patients' quality of life, especially when they become part of a consistent routine. When I understood this, my view changed. I no longer saw the oil as superstition, but as a natural ally that, along with my medicines and self-care, could give me a bit more freedom in my daily life. And believe me, when you live with chronic pain, every small step counts as a big victory. How the oil transformed my nights. The first nights after trying the oil were a mix of surprise and relief. I noticed that sleep came faster because the discomfort in my hands wasn't as intense. Before, I used to toss and turn for hours, trying to find a position that didn't make me feel that stabbing pain in my fingers. But little by little, that scenario began to change. With the routine well established, the oil turned into a nightly ritual. Each night I repeated the same process, washing my hands, drying them gently, and massaging them calmly. It wasn't only the oil itself, but the moment of connection with myself, as if I were telling my body, here's a bit of relief. That simple gesture took on enormous value. What surprised me most wasn't just the decrease in stiffness upon waking, but the way my sleep quality improved. I slept with fewer interruptions and woke with more energy. It wasn't perfect rest, of course, but it was enough to make a real difference in my mood and my day-to-day life. I remember one morning in particular when I woke without that usual fear of moving my hands. I stayed silent for a moment, staring at the ceiling, and thought. I slept again without fear of waking up in pain. It was one of those moments that stay with you, because it gave me back something as basic and valuable as rest. As the weeks went by, the benefits accumulated. My hands were still the hands of someone with arthritis, with limitations and pain, but there was less stiffness, more mobility, and above all, more peace at night. That transformation, though modest, gave me back some confidence that I could still improve my quality of life with small steps. Now, it would be unfair to present the oil as a miracle solution. The reality is that arthritis doesn't disappear, nor does it stop accompanying you every day. Although many nights I felt clear relief, there were others when the result was minimal. Sometimes I woke just as stiff, and that roller coaster of expectations could be frustrating. I also discovered that not all oils work the same for everyone. Some can cause irritation or skin reactions if you don't choose the right product. That's why I understood the importance of not rushing to try just anything without medical supervision. In my case, having my rheumatologist's approval gave me peace of mind and safety to try it. Another truth I learned is that oil doesn't replace medications. The anti-inflammatories and painkillers my doctor prescribes are still necessary because they control the disease at a deeper level. The oil, on the other hand, is an ally, a complement that offers local relief and improvement in my daily routine. I also accepted that I had to keep realistic expectations. There were nights when I thought, tonight will be different. I'll wake without pain. And I found the same stiffness as always. I learned to value each small improvement without expecting miracles, because even a 20% reduction in stiffness already made a big difference. In short, I understood that the most valuable thing wasn't the oil curing me, because that won't happen, but that it gave me back a bit of control over my life. And with a disease like arthritis, that small margin of control is what marks the difference between hopelessness and hope. How to apply the oil step by step. When something works, the best thing is to turn it into a simple, repeatable habit. That's how I designed my nighttime routine with oil, a routine I now do almost automatically, like a bedtime ritual. The first step is to prepare your hands. I always recommend washing them with warm water and a gentle soap, because that removes impurities and opens the skin slightly, ready to receive the oil. After drying with a soft towel comes the central moment, application. You don't need a large amount. Just a teaspoon is enough to cover both hands. I place a few drops in my palm, rub them lightly, and begin the massage. This part is important. The massage shouldn't be rushed, but slow and circular, paying attention to each joint. I spend a few seconds on each finger, starting at the base and moving toward the tip. I also massage the palms and the backs of the hands because stiffness isn't concentrated in just one spot. The massage lasts between 5 and 10 minutes. It's not just applying a liquid, it's a moment to relax, breathe deeply, and release built-up tension. When I finish, my hands are usually warm, and that feeling is the first sign of relief. A practical detail I learned over time is to use cotton gloves. Putting them on after the massage helps the oil penetrate better into the skin and keeps the sheets or bedding from staining. Plus, by retaining heat, the gloves enhance the soothing effect. Consistency is key. It's not about doing it one day yes and another no, but about maintaining it every night, even on those when you think it won't help much. The benefit doesn't come from a single, isolated application, but from repetition that gradually accumulates results. That discipline is what allowed me to turn something so simple into an ally against nighttime stiffness. Surprising other benefits. At first, I thought the oil would only help with arthritis stiffness, but I soon discovered the benefits went further. One of the first positive side effects was improved circulation. After several weeks of nighttime massage, I noticed my hands no longer got cold so easily, and the blood flowed more naturally. Another aspect that surprised me was my skin. I had always suffered from dryness, especially in winter, when the cold cracks the skin. The oil, with its moisturizing power, brought softness and flexibility back to my hands. They went from being rough and tense to feeling more cared for, almost rejuvenated. The ritual also gave me something unexpected: mental relaxation. The simple act of stopping each night to massage my hands, breathe deeply, and let myself be wrapped in the oil's aroma became a kind of therapy. It was a pause in the day, a personal space where pain stopped being the protagonist. That small gesture helped me fall asleep faster, because I got into bed in a state of calm. The change in my mood was another major benefit. It wasn't just about feeling less physical pain, but about experiencing a greater sense of control and hope. Each night that I managed to sleep a bit better, I woke feeling more upbeat, more willing to face the day. And that, for someone living with arthritis, is an invaluable treasure. In short, I discovered that the oil wasn't only a physical remedy, but also an emotional ally. It taught me that caring for my hands with patience and kindness could affect many areas of my well-being: my rest, my mood, my confidence, and even the way I relate to others. Comparison with other complementary therapies. When you live with arthritis in your hands, you discover there are different ways to seek relief. Over the years, I've tried several, and many people I know have experimented with different options too. Among them, local heat, paraffin baths, and physical therapy stand out as common and often helpful alternatives. Local heat is probably the best known resource. Placing warm compresses or soaking your hands in hot water can provide almost immediate relief. Heat relaxes the muscles, reduces stiffness, and helps the blood circulate better. The problem is that its effect is short-lived. As soon as you remove the compress or the water cools, the stiffness returns. It's like a fleeting visit from comfort that soon disappears. Paraffin baths, on the other hand, offer a more intense experience. They consist of dipping your hands in hot paraffin wax, which then solidifies and retains heat for several minutes. This technique is often used in rehabilitation clinics and provides a feeling of deep relief. However, it's not easy to maintain at home. It requires special equipment, time, and sometimes professional supervision to avoid burns. Physical therapy is also a key pillar in managing arthritis. Specific exercises guided by a specialist help strengthen the hands, improve mobility, and preserve function. In the long term, it's probably one of the best investments, but it depends on the patient's consistency and, in many places, can be costly or hard to maintain regularly. This is where oil shows its greatest strength. It doesn't replace any of these therapies, but it offers something they all share to a lesser extent: accessibility. A bottle of oil is affordable, easy to get, and doesn't require sophisticated equipment or constant visits to a specialized center. You apply it at home in a matter of minutes and without complications. It also has the advantage of combining with other techniques. Nothing prevents someone from using heat compresses during the day and relying on oil at night, or from complementing physical therapy sessions with the nighttime massage. In that sense, oil doesn't compete. It integrates, adding its contribution to the set of care practices each person chooses. For me, the difference was in the simplicity. After trying treatments that required time, resources, and even travel, finding a resource so close at hand was liberating. It taught me that sometimes the simplest thing can be the most consistent, and in that consistency, the biggest changes are hidden. Testimonies from other patients. When I shared my experience with oil, I discovered I wasn't alone. In the doctor's waiting room, in conversations with friends, and even in small support groups, I heard stories from other people who had tried this approach, and their experiences were as diverse as every human body. A woman of 60 years told me that olive oil was a before and after in her nights. She applied it every day and swore her hands were softer and less stiff upon waking. She told me with enthusiasm, "It's not that I've been cured, but it gave me back some freedom." Another physical therapy companion, however, said his results were more modest. He felt relief some days, but not all. In his case, he combined it with heat gloves and physical therapy, and he saw oil more as a complement than a solution. He told me, "It's an ally, but not my salvation." I also heard less encouraging stories. An older man tried different oils without noticing significant changes. For him, mobility exercises remained the most useful. Calmly, he said to me, "I tried it, but it wasn't for me." And that's okay. Everybody responds differently. These testimonies helped me understand a fundamental truth. There is no universal remedy. What works wonders for one person may yield partial or no results for another. And that doesn't mean failure. It simply means each body has its own timing, reactions, and needs. The message I draw from all this is that it's worth trying, but always with realistic expectations and with your doctor's guidance. Because while oil can be an accessible and hopeful resource, it doesn't replace professional care and doesn't guarantee identical results for everyone. The value of sharing these stories is that we feel accompanied. Knowing that others have gone through the same, that they have tried, failed, succeeded, or persisted, reminds us that we are not alone in this battle against arthritis. And sometimes that sense of community is as powerful as any treatment. The power of small changes. Sometimes we think that to improve our health we need big transformations, expensive treatments, complex surgeries, or endless therapies. But the truth is that in many cases, the power lies in small changes. And that was one of the greatest lessons I learned by applying oil to my hands every night. It was such a simple gesture that at first I doubted its value. How could a nighttime massage with a few drops of oil make any difference in a disease as complex as arthritis? However, over time I discovered that it wasn't only the oil, but the consistency of repeating that care over and over that made the difference. Daily discipline became a pillar of my routine. Each night, even the hardest ones, I devoted a few minutes to that ritual. It wasn't a sacrifice, but a way to remind myself that I still had control over part of my well-being. And in that simple act, I found hope. Because although arthritis is still there, so is my decision not to give up. I realized these small gestures have a cumulative effect. One night of massage may ease things a little, but a month of consistency can transform how you sleep, how you wake up, and even how you face the day. Changes don't appear all at once. They build slowly, almost silently, until one day you notice something is different. This learning isn't limited to oil or arthritis. I believe it applies to any aspect of life. Maybe we can't control the disease, but we can choose to care for ourselves with small steps. And those steps, though they may seem minimal, have the power to take us far. So if you ever feel overwhelmed, think of something small you can do for yourself today. Don't expect a big change immediately. It's enough to take one step, repeat it tomorrow, and then the next day. That sum of actions can be the key to improving your quality of life, just as it was for me. After months of applying oil to my hands before bed, I understood several things that will always stay with me. The first is that arthritis doesn't disappear with a simple remedy, but we can find reliefs that make life more bearable. The second is that discipline and consistency are as important as any medical treatment. And the third, perhaps the most valuable, is that we must never lose hope of getting better, even if only a little. Oil is not a cure. It doesn't eliminate the disease or erase the pain at its root. But it is meaningful help, an accessible tool that allowed me to regain some quality of life. Thanks to it, I slept better again, woke with less stiffness, and faced the day with more energy. And that, for me, is already a huge gift. I also learned that every body is different. What worked in my case may not have the same effect on someone else. That's why I stress the importance of listening to your doctor, trying carefully, and not getting discouraged if results take time. The essential thing is not to stop trying. My message for you, who are listening to me now, is not to lose faith in small changes. Sometimes we think they're not worth it, but they can be the key to regaining something as basic as sleeping without fear or moving your hands more easily. And now I want to invite you to share your experience. Tell me in the comments what tricks or remedies have helped you with arthritis. And don't forget to tell me your age and your country. I'll love to read you. Your story can inspire someone else, just as other stories inspired me. Because in the end, we are all on this path together, learning, trying, and supporting one another. And in that community, we find a strength that sometimes no treatment can give us. The strength of knowing we are not alone.